Thank you for joining us today here for the Fairhaven Lecture Series. My name is Carrie Bourne. I'm from the Office of Continuing Education at UW-Whitewater, and we've hosted the lecture series here at Fairhaven Senior Services since 1983. And for the last year, we've been virtual, which is not as great, but we're back here in person, and we're happy to have you all here with us. This semester, we're focusing on science. We have faculty from our different science departments, including today's presenter, who's from our biology department at our UW-Rock County campus. Let's go ahead and get started. Tom Klubertans is professor of biology in the Department of Integrated Studies at UW-Whitewater at Rock County. His undergraduate degree in biology was from UW-Oshkosh, and his graduate work was at Iowa State University. Professor Klubertans received his MS in entomology, and his PhD was co-major in entomology and ecology and evolutionary biology. His graduate research mostly was in soybean pest management. He has been a member of the faculty at the Rock County campus since 1998, but also served as department chair for the UW Colleges and associate dean for academic affairs. Professor Klubertans' current entomological research in insects involves the study of mayflies, and he recently published a book titled Mayfly Larvae of Wisconsin. He is also a co-coordinator for a long-term research project studying the birds of the Cook Arboretum in Janesville. Please welcome Professor Tom Klubertans.
Thank you so very much. It is a thrill to be here today. I really appreciate the invitation to come and share my love of birds with you. I appreciate all of you being here and also all of you online who are either watching live or are watching this as the archived version. So our title for this afternoon is Citizen Science, a Tool for Ornithology. So I'm going to talk about how citizens can contribute to the study of birds and in a scientific way. I'm going to divide my presentation into three sections. First, just a little bit of a background about citizen science, what it is, what qualifies as citizen science. Give you a number of examples of citizen science reaching all different peoples of all different levels and abilities, examples that just about anyone could participate in and contribute in. And then finally talk specifically about our Cook Arboretum research project, give you an update as to what just happened this last summer, new data that we have from the project. So those are the three areas I want to talk about in the short time that we get to be together here on this beautiful Monday afternoon. But first I want to give a shout out to my Natural History of Wisconsin class. I invited them to join us today and watch today, and whether they're all here live or whether they're watching the archive, I told them that in my shout out I would have some key words that they would be looking for on the presentation as part of their homework packet. They've got to prove to me that they actually watched. So this is specifically for them. They get extra credit. So, citizen science, what is it? It's research that we can conduct with the help of members of the public. In particular, members of the public who aren't necessarily professional biologists. They're amateurs who are able to collect quality data that we can use in scientific endeavors. And so that's what citizen science is, non-professionals, amateurs contributing to good science. I'd like to talk about some pros and cons of that, advantages and disadvantages of that. And first off, just as an advantage, one thing we've seen in this current generation is a loss of organismal biologists in the field. People who study organisms in the field, what we call natural historians, are becoming quite scarce. In my own field of entomology, where I study mayflies, there's fewer and fewer of us who are doing this kind of work. There just aren't many professional positions out there anymore for people studying in an ecological context the organisms in the field. And so by having members of the public join us, we can compensate a little bit for that loss of the professional ranks. And then secondly, we can achieve increased sizes of data sets by crowdsourcing the data. We can get gigantic data sets that we can analyze with great coverage over all parts of the country or even the world. And that is a tremendous advantage. Thirdly, decrease costs. Yeah, people like me get paid a little bit of money. And when you have a bunch of professional scientists doing the work, you know, it costs some money to do that. Amateurs don't necessarily ask for a lot of compensation in the volunteer time that they use to collect data. So it is inexpensive that way to collect data. And then what I think is the most valuable part of citizen science is how we can use citizen science to increase awareness in the public. I personally believe that there's an increasing detachment between people and nature in our society. And I think that by getting people engaged with biological research is a way to get them to understand and appreciate what's around them and maybe even care about protecting it and preserving it. So I think engaging both but also politically, you know, just getting people engaged is so valuable to our society. So I think there's other advantages, but there's my top ones. But with everything, there's pros and cons. There's disadvantages too. And first off, it may require training for amateurs, for citizens to collect these data. You want to make sure they're collecting good data. You might have to take some time or provide some resources, maybe online, maybe in person, to train those people. As an experimental biologist, I understand the importance of controlling variables during research. The more variables you can control, the more things you can control, the better the outcomes of your experiments will be. When you crowdsource control out to the public, you lose a lot of that control. You have a lot of things you can't control, and that just makes the data very messy, very difficult to analyze. And a lot of scientists don't like doing that. They don't like giving up that control of the variables. And so that's definitely a challenge. Not insurmountable, but just a challenge. And then something like birds, incorrect identifications. Not everybody knows that this bird is a brewer's blackbird. The brewer's blackbird, the rusty blackbird, and the common grackle, they're pretty hard to identify. And a lot of people, many people in the public would misidentify this bird, not even knowing that there's a thing called the brewer's blackbird out there. No less, if you knew there was, could you still identify it correctly? And we have that problem throughout a lot of the bird groups. They're just hard to identify. I've been studying birds since I was 13, okay? And I'm still no good at it in a lot of ways. I mean, I still have areas of bird study where I know I'm lacking. It just takes a whole lifetime to really become, you always learn. And so when members of the public are doing it who maybe don't even have that much experience, mistakes are going to happen, and that affects your data. But we get some really, really valuable outcomes from citizen science, some real big rewards, and why so many scientists are going down this road. Distributional records. Where are these birds found? By crowdsourcing, we can have every corner of the country checked for that species, find out if it's there or not. We couldn't have our scientists running around all over the place doing that. It's just not feasible. But crowdsourcing it, we can. Phenological records. Phenology relates to the timing of events in the life cycle of an organism. When do they migrate? When do they breed? Those kind of events. To have a professional biologist sitting there waiting for the bird to arrive in every corner of the state, this is not feasible. But crowdsourcing it, we can get that information about dates of migration, dates of nesting, dates of fledging, things like that. Population assessments. How big is the population? By monitoring populations with citizen science, we can kind of find out maybe when there are concerns, for example, for a particular population, what species are in trouble. Endangered, threatened species surveillance. Just keeping tabs on those species that we already recognize have troubles, that are already endangered. Members of the public, without harm to those organisms, members of the public can report what they've seen, and we can better track and understand what those populations are doing. Environmental monitoring and stewardship, monitoring nature preserves, monitoring parks, wildlife centers, and things like that, places like that, having members of the public making sure that those ecosystems are healthy, that those biological communities are healthy and diverse. Members of the public can help a lot in that long-term monitoring. Determining long-term trends, and that's part of what our research project at the Cook Arboretum is all about. Long-term trends, say 20, 30, 40, 60 years, in graduate school, where most scientists sometimes feel that's the most productive times is in graduate school. But you have a finite number of years there. You got to graduate, you got to move on. So your research has to be done, and you've got to graduate and move on with your career. You don't have time to do a 30-year study. You can't. With citizen science, we can do that. We can monitor the same technique year after year after year, a site, much, for a longer period of time than any one person's career even. And we can continue to collect those data. So long-term studies become quite feasible with citizen science. So that's kind of citizen science in a nutshell about what it is, advantages, disadvantages. Next, I want to talk about the opportunities that everyone has to participate in citizen science with birds. Some of the examples I'm going to give are definitely maybe better for someone with a moderate or even high level of knowledge about birds. They require some expertise. Some of the other examples I'm going to give, it could be someone with no expertise at all contributing to that project. Some of the examples maybe require that a person is able to do extensive hiking, and others are, watching from a window, watching a bird feeder from a window and submitting data from those observations. So that's why I say that really anyone can contribute at least to one of these, if not more, of these examples. So here's the list I'd like to go through of really the most successful citizen science projects out there. All the way from eBird down to the last one I'm going to talk about, the one that we have right in Janesville, the Cook Arboretum Research Project. So eBird is the first one I want to talk about just because it's really the preeminent example of crowdsourcing data for birds. So eBird is a website hosted and sponsored by Cornell University, and it is also available as an app on your cell phone. You can also enter data right on the web, but the cell phone app is tremendous. And you can log data that you observe from anywhere in the world into this portal, and it will be data available to anyone who wants to use those data for scientific purposes or for other birders who want to see what birds are being found in a given area. It's pretty much public information. You also, in the portal, have the benefit of having eBird analyze your sightings, tell you how many species you've seen in Walworth County or in the state of Wisconsin and in your trips to wherever you like to go. So it has global coverage, maintains your life lists, for example, and things like that, things that birders love to do. It has regional reviewers that look at any suspect records, anything that might be uncommon or rare. And these are experts that help people make sure that what they're reporting is accurate. So there's a good kind of quality check there in the eBird system. Like I said, the data are accessible to the public and to scientists. Look at that. Per year, 100 million records per year are submitted to this portal. Global coverage. I make use of this last one. I set eBird to send me rare bird alerts. If somebody sees a rare or uncommon bird, I get a notification by email. If somebody sees a bird that I have not seen in a county that I've selected or a state that I've selected, I get an email. So I get real-time information about what is out there. So again, eBird is the preeminent, the best data set that we have. From eBird, you can generate maps like this, showing distribution of birds, like this Carolina wren. Whoop, I went backwards. Carolina wren. Here's the map, and what it shows is Wisconsin is right on the northern fringe of the range of the Carolina wren. We're right on the edge, and we get, in the southern counties of Wisconsin, we more reliably get Carolina wrens every year, a couple of counties north, and it would be much less common. I love this one. What they're able to generate from all the data that people submit. I'd mentioned phenological records, like records of migrations. So they are able to create animations of species. This is the wood thrush, which is one of our woodland thrushes. It's a bird struggling these days with habitat loss. But watch what they're going to, and I'm crossing my fingers this will work, but watch what's going to happen as it tracks through the year. So right now, it's showing all the winter populations in Central America for the wood thrush. And it's going to show over the year wood thrush migrating into the continent, settling and breeding in summer, and then traveling back south. All of this is from eBird data from members of the public. So there you see the big wave of birds coming north, breeding, and then heading back south. From data like this, we can even see migratory paths. Where do they go? How do they head north? How do they head south? And what's the time of the year? And all of that. Insane amount of data from eBird. The second example I want to give is the Great Backyard Bird Count. And this is also hosted and sponsored in part by the Cornell Labs for Ornithology. The Great Backyard Bird Count is a relatively recent example of citizen science, started in 1998. What's special about it is that it monitors birds in a window of the season where we don't get a lot of data, in February, before spring migration, after the Christmas counts. It's a window where we just don't have a lot of other data sets, and that is nice that we have that. You can report birds from any habitat, not just backyards, parks, any habitat, in that 4-day window. And next spring, there's the dates for it, 18 to 21 February of 22. The way this project works is that you report the greatest number of each species that you see at any given time. So if I see 3 mourning doves now, 5 mourning doves later, I report 5 mourning doves because they could be double counted. So it's kind of conservative that way, conservative to make sure we don't double count birds. You have to have a big flock all at once. The Great Backyard Bird Count has become quite an event. Over 300,000 participants in 2021. Remember, that was the year of the pandemic, which we're still in. But to have 300,000 people participating during that is impressive. 190 countries, over 40 million birds reported from this 4-day window, and 6,436 species, all citizen science, and providing tremendous data sets to scientists. This is the growth of the Great Backyard Bird Count project. It's the only thing that's meaningful here is just the explosive growth here in the number of reports and users, participants in the project. In North America, these are the most numerous birds reported in 2020. I don't have 2021 data, so it's the year before 2020. But snow goose, 7 million snow geese. The next one, maybe surprised, common mewers, over 3.5 million common mewers. Oh, it's a penguin-looking thing from the ocean along the northern Pacific coast. They're thick up there. There's also some populations off the east coast and the northeast coast during winter, but most from the Pacific. A bird that you would never see here. And it's one of the most numerous birds in North America. Canada goose, red-winged blackbirds, et cetera. You see some that you're not surprised by here, for sure. Another project I want to talk about, maybe something closer to home than common mewers, is the annual Midwest crane count. When I was in college, I was able to participate in one of the first crane counts. And it's excited me so much to participate. That was my first ever citizen science project to participate in as a citizen, was to go count cranes. And we're still doing this. It's sponsored by the International Crane Foundation here in Wisconsin, up in Baraboo. Maybe some of you have been there. Yep. And it is a long-term project to monitor cranes and their populations. So it started in 1976, tells you about how old I am. And 2022, it's on the 9th of April, just in case anyone online or here is interested in putting that on your calendar. But you got to get up kind of early. 5:30 to 7:30 in the morning is when you count the cranes. We monitor crane populations, but also habitat, associated species. They get a full report of everything that we observe. It has county coordinators in the project who help coordinate to make sure the county has good coverage in all the different parts of the counties. At its peak, it went down a little bit, but at its peak, over 2,500 participants. The sandhill crane has 5 subspecies across the country. A few of them are non-migratory. We have the one here, the greater sandhill crane, that is a migratory population, one of 2 migratory populations in the country. That specific subspecies that we have here in southern Wisconsin, I keep wanting to say Rock County. In southern Wisconsin, the greater sandhill crane was almost lost. It was almost extinct. It was down to as few as 25 breeding pair. And that was the impetus for starting this project. And since then, as you know, cranes are everywhere now. The species is doing much, much better. The crane count has now expanded to include whooping cranes, because now we have whooping cranes to count. They were even in greater peril, close to extinction. And we can now see whooping cranes in southern Wisconsin every year in migration. They are the tallest bird in all of North America. Today, there's only 800 individuals left, but that's a great improvement over where they were. They were down to just a couple dozen. The population is still growing, and like I said, we can see these. You can be outside and find these every year, somewhere in southern Wisconsin. These are the 2012 results, 2021. I flipped the numbers around there. Last spring's results from the different states. Just to highlight, here's Wisconsin. 11,513 cranes counted during that 2-hour period in the crane count. So here are some of my past students out there in the field. You have to show up while it's dark. Everybody gathers together in the dark. It's cold, it's miserable, no one's happy. They get done and they're all smiling. They had a great time. 2 hours later. It's a great, great project. May counts. Here's another one. Anybody can contribute it to this project. Sponsored by the Wisconsin Society for Ornithology, our state Ornithological Society. And it looks at peak songbird migration in May, when that big rush of birds are coming up from the south. Results are published in the Journal for the Society every year. And our one in Rock County that I participate in is hosted by our local bird club, the Ned Hollister Bird Club, and there are other bird clubs, in every region. In Rock County, our efforts usually yield in our one-day count 140 species. That's about our average that we get on a May count. And we have members of the public, we try to get as many people to help as possible. Breeding bird surveys. Now this is an example of a citizen science project maybe where you want somebody with some real expertise, because identifying the birds can be quite challenging. A lot of it is done by ear. And so you need people who really can identify birds by ear. The breeding bird surveys represent one of our best, most scientific data sets. Started in the 1960s, we eventually got continental coverage of these. They're done during summer, during the breeding season. And you have a route along roads that is repeated every year. The same exact sites are sampled every time, every year. Each survey has 50 point sites. You stop at 50 different locations and count birds. Each point takes 3 minutes. So you got to be quick, you got to be on the ball, you got to be able to hear these birds. That's why the expertise is needed. Over 4,800 of these are done every year. And like I said, because of this strict design, experimental design to this, it's a great data set. So here is the breeding bird survey results for the common raven, showing where ravens are found. And you can see in Wisconsin, the North Woods are the only place, it's the only where you're going to find ravens in Wisconsin. This is the breeding bird survey data for the veery, which is another one of our thrushes. Many people never even have heard of a veery before. It's called veery because that's the song. It says veer, 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 veery. So it sounds like its name. And what they've done with this map is to show in all the oranges and reds where the population is declining. And this is the overall map, the overall graph of decline. Veery is one of those many, many songbirds that's in a dramatic decline, population crash over the last 40 years. Many songbirds are experiencing that. For context, that red area is a decrease of greater or less than, depending upon, because the negative numbers, so a decrease of less than 1.5%. We're losing more than 1.5% of the population per year. So in terms of 40 years, you've lost, what, 60% of the population? Oh boy, right? That's what we're seeing with so many songbirds. Project Feeder Watch. This is a great one for any member of the public, regardless of their background, experience, and expertise. Cornell Labs, again, boy, they're behind so much bird conservation work, but also Birds Canada. Started in 1976. And basically, you're just watching bird feeders in the backyard and submit the data. What's different about this, it's not just a couple of days. You do this throughout the seasons. From early November to early April. So it's that kind of throughout the winter period. And real flexible time requirements, real user-friendly, but people who know they're going to be around to watch bird feeders can do this very easily and do a great job. So here are all the bird feeders across the country in Project Feeder Watch. It's a great citizen science project. As with all these projects, we can create graphs. This is the graph for the evening grosbeak, showing the maximum number of birds in red and the percent of feeders with evening grosbeaks, both declining from 1990 to 2020. It's another one of our birds that's on the decline, and Project Feeder Watch is able to detect that. Audubon Christmas counts, the last one I want to talk about before I jump into talking about our Cook Arboretum project. I love the Audubon Christmas counts because I get to go out in the heart of winter when I don't otherwise get to do a lot of birding, and I get to remind myself how much I love birding. Yeah, I love it. It is the longest continuously running citizen science project in the entire country. Started in 1900. So we've got 120 years of Christmas count data. Fantastic data set. It looks at winter populations, which is great because we don't have a lot of other studies looking at winter populations. A one-day sample period between mid-December and early January. Every location does it at about the same time, same weekend or weekday every year. But because there are so many different dates possible, myself and my birding colleagues are able to do several of these per year. I do 3 of them. I participate in 3 of them because they're on different dates. So I can travel to different locations and help out that count. And then next week, help out another count. There were 2,424 of these Christmas bird counts in 1919, and 2020 in that transitional calendar year, with 4 million birds recorded. Each Christmas count consists of a circle on the map with a radius of 7.5 miles, so 15 miles across. So we have a bird one in Rock County that covers, it starts at the airport, Rock County Airport, and goes out 7.5 miles in all directions. And everybody just goes out and tries to find every bird they can find, count them within that area. These are all of the Christmas bird counts in Wisconsin. It's a little pale, but there's Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, there's Duluth, there's Minneapolis. So all of this area, that's all Wisconsin. Those are all of the Christmas bird counts on file, on record. In our area in southern Wisconsin, we've got quite a few. Beloit, Broadhead, Cooksville, Deerfield, Fort Atkinson, Lake Geneva, and Palmyra. I participate in the Broadhead, Beloit, and Cooksville counts. And it's just a fantastic opportunity for people to think you're crazy in the dead of winter being out counting birds. The data that are collected are submitted to Audubon, analyzed. They produce a beautiful report every year about all of the different count sites, and then they can also use the data for conservation purposes. I mentioned evening grosbeak earlier. This shows all the areas in red are dropping in populations of evening grosbeak according to the Christmas bird counts. And again, 1 to 2% per year in all of these oranges and reds. Kind of alarming. So the last example I want to give of a citizen science project is our own project in Rock County, the Birds of the Cook Arboretum Research Project, or BCARP. I don't know, BCARP. So we began this in 2006. In my lab, a number of the birders from the area got together and talked about what more can we do to advance the sharing of our love for ornithology with the public. And we came up with this project as an idea, and it is still going. Our plan is to finish it after 20 years. 2025 is our target end date to finish this project. Not many people do a 20-year project like this and just commit to it, and we've had a lot of fun with it. The project leaders are myself, Quentin Yorger from Evansville and Aaron Haycraft from Broadhead. These two birder friends of mine, they're extraordinary birders. And Aaron always loves it when I tease him. He's one of my former students. He took my ornithology class, and now he's one of the top birders in the state. But the three of us work together to make this thing go. We have our own website. Down on the bottom there's the link, but if you just Google the Cook Arboretum Project, you'll find it. The website tells people how to, if they want to help out, participate, tells them how to do that. The Cook Arboretum in Janesville is a city park. 160 acres in Janesville. It is quite hilly. Located in this region, northwest corner of the city. Here is the Janesville Country Club in northwest Janesville. And it's right here on County A, just outside of the city limits. County A is also Memorial Drive through Janesville. And so it's just on the edge of town, and it's this beautiful wooded area. Mixed hardwoods, steep hills, which is why I'm going to be glad to be done with the project in a few years, because those hills are pretty exhausting. But the city park is managed by the Janesville school system. This is where the Janesville Public School System does its environmental education. That's why it's also called, everybody in Janesville calls it the JSOL, the Outdoor Labs for the School District of Janesville. But it's the Cook Arboretum, more formally. So it's this beautiful woods with hilly terrain, and it's shaped like a skinny domino. This is the park, pardon me. This is the parking area down in the lower left, the southwest corner. The park is narrow and tall, but it looks flat here, but it is not. There is a ravine down the middle, and steep hillsides on either side, and rugged terrain. They do cross-country meets because it's a challenging place to run in. Well-groomed trails and excellent birding opportunities. On the north edge is the creek, Marsh Creek, which attracts a different group of birds as well. There's mayflies in there too, by the way. So city park, school district, the JSOL. This is one of our best birding sites in all of southern Wisconsin. The nickname of the Cook Arboretum is its Rock County's Wyalusing State Park. In fact, there are some similarities in some of the birds we see with Wyalusing over in Grant County. There are birds that we just don't see elsewhere in the county and in our counties. The best place otherwise probably would be, I think, would be Kettle Moraine State Forest. So not bad for a little school forest, not bad at all. It's been nominated as an important bird area by the Wisconsin Bird Conservation Initiative, recognizing that there are birds there that just don't have anywhere else to live. It's that important of a site. eBird records 163 species from that park. That's pretty good for one little site that's shaped like a domino. Personally, I've got 145 of those 163 that I've documented from the park. So even with all the trips that I make there, I still miss stuff that shows up. Hard to believe, but it happens. The park has several species that are on our various conservation lists. And occasionally even a threatened, state threatened or endangered species shows up. But several species that breed there are on the next level down, the species of special concern that the DNR has as a list. Rarities include, again, things you just don't see elsewhere. Cerulean warblers, Kentucky warbler, white-eyed vireo, whippoorwill, and summer tanager showed up, lark sparrows. I mean, it's just so many things that you have to work really hard to find anywhere around here, and they're all there. Fantastic site. So our goal was to monitor bird populations over that 20-year period, right? To do a long-term study. Get breeding records, involve the public. That was a big thing. We wanted to get the public engaged. To document changes to the park. To go 20 years. Make that commitment. We've almost done it. And to finally, when we're done, publish our results. We've documented all sorts of changes to the park in the project. We could see some of these changes were coming, which is why we started the project in part. But all of these are threats to the birds of the park. A power line corridor that gashed through the edge of the park. Invasive species, buckthorn, barberry, honeysuckle, garlic mustard, have just created a nightmare in this park and all forests in southern Wisconsin. Creation of prairie patches, habitat management. They've been trying to do a demonstration prairie, and it changes the habitat a bit. A subdivision went in, and in the subdivision, they had to add a road to get to the subdivision, so they took out a chunk of the park. Gave us another chunk on the north end, which is a little bit different habitat. There was some land swap done. The park is right here. Okay? That's Cook Arboretum Park. This landscape, this beautiful forested landscape that goes all the way to the Rock River. Rock River is right on the edge here. This beautiful forested landscape was dissected, bisected, and trisected by that land development. And birds don't like that. Forest birds do not like that. So we've lost not that much of the park, but we lost the whole landscape size level of the forest. Logging projects altered. They had to take out some trees that were hazardous because they were getting old. Took and changed the characteristics of the forest itself. And then finally, the last thing is the Ice Age Trail. Now blazes right through the park, right through the center of the park. It comes out the top. The Heritage Ice Age Trail. It's great to have people, right, having access to the park, but what happens is there's so much more foot traffic now. And people are bringing their dogs in the park, which, by the way, is illegal. They can't do it. But they're doing it, and there are just the amount of people pressure on the park is much, much greater than it was now with the arrival of the Ice Age Trail. All of these things are threats. So monitor populations. We see threats that affect bird populations, including brown-headed cowbirds. Brown-headed cowbirds lay their eggs in the nests of other birds, and it causes those other forest birds to fail in their nesting attempts. It's a nightmare. We also wanted to provide breeding records. So we've been watching and taking note anytime we see reproductive behaviors to document breeding. Got to get the right one there. So we've got two major efforts of sampling in the project. What I call large group and point counts. In large group sampling, we're looking for 3 species. 3 species that are known to be vulnerable to habitat loss. Species that we could say are some of the best of this park. Hooded warbler, Cerulean warbler, and Acadian flycatcher. These 3 species are the most vulnerable in the park. And you aren't going to find them at very many places in Rock County or Walworth County. There are these 3 species, Cerulean, hooded warbler, and off to the right there, the Acadian flycatcher. Of the 3, my favorite of all birds is the hooded warbler. If you've never seen one, they're spectacular birds. We go out in early June and early July and do these large group counts. Members of the public with radios in hand so we can talk to each other, spread out throughout the entire park. And we take simultaneous counts of birds from all different locations at once and get a much better tally of the birds present than if one person was walking through the woods. Because these birds follow you as you're walking. They're tricky. They follow you as you're walking. And sometimes you think, oh, I've seen 5 of them. No, you've seen 1 of them 5 times. But when we're all spread out like that with radios, we can verify whether or not we are seeing 5 birds. Here is our map that we can actually plot our observations. So I got the GPS map. And lots of advantage to these large group. Again, we're able to avoid double counting birds. Here's the fun part to me, right there. We've had 58 members of the public join us on these scientific counts since 2006. And I'm very proud of that. We need more. We need more people to continue to help us with this project to finish in the next couple of years. A lot of press coverage on our project has been fantastic. So here are the results of including this year's results. For Acadian flycatcher, these are the locations where Acadian flycatchers have been found. They love the ravine, this deep valley in the center of the park that runs north-south through the park. That shows that. They just love that area. That's the habitat they want. But population trend, not so great. A little bit of decline there in the years that we've done the project for Acadian flycatcher. Hooded warbler, my favorite bird. Here they are. It's a little washed out there, but these green dots mark the various dates and years where we've seen hooded warbler. There's their graph. Downhill. Cerulean warbler. Downhill. Look, we had a number of years we had none. We used to have 5, 6, 7 birds per date in the park, 7 breeding pair, because each male singing represents a breeding pair for the most part. And then we had this long stretch of none. So we've had a precipitous decline in that species. We also do point counts. As I wrap it up here, we also do point counts where we go out and count every species of bird. This is done just with our project leaders who, we're all 3 of us are good with the ears, and we can identify about every bird call out there. And we go out in April, May, and June and stop at various sites throughout the park, predetermined sites. We do this at every sampling date. We count all the birds we hear and see for 5 minutes. Here are our point count sites. We visit the same 15 sites every time, 3 times a season, 3 times a summer. And these are some of the results. And what you're going to see is a big contrast to the last 3 graphs. All of the urban development and expansion. Robins love that, right? We got a new subdivision right nearby. American robin, population increasing very nicely throughout the project duration. Woodpeckers, they loved the effect of the ash borer. Yep, all those trees died. Woodpeckers, I think, had a great time during that. And we had a lot of ash trees die in the park. And woodpecker populations have come up, apparently, throughout the project, at least on average. Gray catbird. This is a species that loves edge. It loves brush. It loves thickets. And the logging project that took out a bunch of old trees left behind a lot of thickets. The gash, where they put in that power corridor, put in a lot of thickets. Instead of interior forests, where catbirds don't love to live, there's a lot of edge habitat now for them. And the gray catbirds, of all species, they've done really, really well in these years. Brown-headed cowbird has done a little better over time. No surprise there. But what about our 3 target species? Our 3 species that we know are sensitive to habitat loss, sensitive to problems in their migratory routes, that we know that we've just seen globally these kind of birds, not globally, but continentally, these kind of birds, all these neotropical migrants that migrate and winter in South America and Central America, as a group, they're not doing well. That's where we're seeing 2, 3, and 4% declines per year. So on our point counts, here they are. Acadian flycatcher, downhill. Hooded warbler, downhill. Cerulean warbler, very much downhill. So we have concerns about some groups of birds, in particular, like what everyone else is seeing. Long-distance migrants are in trouble. and the ones especially that are tied to the interior of forests. Birds that love the edge, birds that love backyards, they're doing okay. Birds that need the interior of forests are suffering greatly with our current methods of management. Ovenbird, not one of our primary or regional target species, but now look what's happened with ovenbird. It's another one of those migrants, and they've become quite scarce in the park just in these years that we've been doing the project. And the other thing we've done is try to document breeding records. And this is a list of some of the birds that we've actually got breeding records. We actually see them with young and things like that. We just keep taking those records, documenting that they do breed in the park. And it just shows everyone how valuable this park is. Fantastic site. And that birders from across the state come to Cook Arboretum because they know they'll find these birds. And they know they can find birds they won't find elsewhere. And I have it all the time. People contact me, how do I find these birds in Cook? And I say, just enter the park. Just enter the park. That's the first step. Because, you know, not a lot of people know about places like this. So project will continue to 2025. I'm so thrilled to share with you the most recent data and to tell you just that, you know, that we have people out there who really care about places like Cook Arboretum. We have a variety of population trends, some going up, some going down. Many habitat changes in the park. When we started the project, there were 130 species known from the park. And now we're up to 163. So just the efforts to coordinate everyone, to report together, we've been able to document lots of extra birds that use that park and show how important Cook Arboretum is. So in summary, citizen science, many significant contributions possible, that we're able to get a lot of good scientific data, that we have publishable data sets, and more importantly, engagement with the public. And I just invite everyone here, in whatever way you can, everyone listening to the recording and to the live presentation, just invite you, will you join us and help us collect these data and help us conserve and protect our birds? Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We have time for a little bit of Q&A. If there are questions, I will come in around with the microphone if anyone has questions. Yeah.
You say that they're losing habitat. Do you have any idea of how many acres or whatever it might be that some of these birds require to maintain their populations? And do you do a statistical analysis of some of your data, or have you? And is there anybody at the University in Whitewater who is also ornithologically interested?
There are, the last question first, there are some at Whitewater who are ornithologically interested. They're not engaged with this kind of project per se. They're maybe looking at animal behavior and things like that. The birds like the Cerulean Warbler require large tracts of forest. 160 acres is barely enough. The size of a park there by itself is not enough to attract Cerulean Warblers. They need a landscape of large mature forest, which is why it's so important that we keep these things intact, not just the park, but the neighboring lands as well. And that's what makes them different than a lot of your backyard birds. You know, these birds just, if they see a break in the forest, they're gone. They want nothing to do with it. So the gash, for example, the power line corridor, is a real turnoff to them. So that addresses two. And what was the third one? I'm going to hold off on stats until the project is done, just so I don't bias any data collection that we're doing on the way. For example, looking at all those lines and seeing if there are negative slopes there that are real, statistically real. I want to hold off on that to the end of the project. But obviously for publication, we're going to have to do that. And there'll be very simple stats, though, just because the nature of the project is not exactly controlled experimental design. So it's going to be basically looking at those slopes of those lines.
Yeah, we have one here.
Would you care to speculate on what the recent forest fires in the West will have on the bird population?
In the West, it may be significant. Our birds in the eastern flyway, our migrants, we don't share with them over there in their flyways, and the species from out west. So we won't see an effect here. But out west they would. And it's a great concern that so many acres have been lost. There are species with very limited ranges that have very specific habitat requirements in those forests in the west that are impacted. Much like what happens in the southeast when hurricanes hit. There are times when the barrier islands get hit, for example, and there are certain endangered species that just get hammered because they're so restricted in where they're located. So it's a big concern out there.
We have time for one more question if anyone has one. Okay.
Front?
Yeah, I can come up here with the microphone so everyone can hear. Here you go.
I'm curious about whether you have two life lists, one for Wisconsin and one global. Do you have a life list?
I have a life list that includes everything. But with eBird, you can focus in and go to any level that you want, state, county, or even site. So I maintain life lists in my backyard. Every site that I go to, that's what's great about eBird, is it keeps track of all that for you. It's fantastic. I've been keeping life lists since I was 13.
That's really
Yeah.
what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Is how big is your life list?
I don't bird as much as I would like. So I have just recently hit 300 as a life list, and that required a trip out west, because 95% of all the birds I have in my life list are from Wisconsin, and 85% maybe are from Rock County. I mean, I just do not travel to go birding. That's not my nature.
Okay, that's really what I
Yeah.
How much does feral cats affect the bird population?
Oh boy, that's a large topic. We believe that the ornithological community believes the feral cats are a significant problem, major problem, with many millions of birds killed per year, to the extent where the ornithological community actively advocates that people simply do not let cats run around, and that we should find a way to avoid that at all cost, and it's an intolerable thing. And there are many bird species that just have no defenses against that, especially ground nesting birds. Yeah.
I'm sorry to leave it on a sad note like that, but if you have more questions for Professor Klubertons, please feel free to come ask. But please join me in thanking
Thank
Professor
you.
Tom.
My pleasure.
Thank you.